Thank you. Good morning. I'd like to start out by asking you to join me in doing a couple of things. First, I'd like you to all imagine your childhood home or the room you grew up in. Is that possible? Okay. Second, imagine you won a lottery ticket and that made you rich enough to buy a vacation in the Maldives. You had to plan that with your family. Try to imagine that planning session. Imagine you going to the Maldives. Can you do that? That should be pretty easy. So we have this fantastic ability to recall the past. We're all visual thinkers. But we can also imagine the future. We can do something that pictures can't do. We can take photos of the past. We can draw the future. So I'd like you to help me a bit. How many in here would consider that you are good at drawing? Please raise your hand. Okay. Now, how many of you would consider that you are not so good at drawing? Okay. So we might have established that in this room we have around, I think I was right to do it this way, maybe around 20% who consider this, and then the rest of us consider this. There might be a room somewhere for something in between, but let's just stick to this. So that seems to be a problem. We are all visual thinkers, and we have this block, maybe. Now, this is the drawing of Malte. He's 10 years old. He drew this drawing especially for today. And as you can see, it's a battle between dinosaurs and humans on planet Earth. Humans are coming on the left side. So my question would be, why might creative drawing be worth doing as adults? And the point of this talk is, or these three, we are all visual thinkers, and we can all draw. And then drawing together is a very important practice if we want to create movement. So I'll tell a story about Chris, Grace, and Ben, and you might have had similar experiences. They meet very regularly on a cafe after work. And this particular Friday afternoon, they meet up, have some coffee, and sit and talk. And Chris, he has this great idea. He just wants to share, so he asks Grace and Ben, well, if we were to gather people who would do great presentations, short, crisp, about ideas that are worth spreading, what would attract you? Who should be the presenters? Oh, he clears the table, the paper tablecloth is there, and he pulls up some pens. And then Grace and Ben immediately jumps in. They start adding clever people, diverse, and they draw up. And in a short time, this collage emerges. Now the night continues, and they get a cup of coffee or maybe a beer. And then the topic changes. Chris, he folds the paper tablecloth in his pocket, and well, they forget about it. The following Monday morning, Chris, he unfortunately has the same pair of trousers on, so he reaches to his back pocket, and then he looks at what's there, and he remembers, that's the paper tablecloth, and then he pulls it out, and he sees all the drawing and the sketches that they had, and immediately he's transformed back to that Friday afternoon. He can not only remember the conversation they had, he can actually also recall the smell, and the music, and maybe even the atmosphere of the cafe. So that's some amazing stuff that the brain does to us, or we are able to do with our brain. But the story doesn't end there. The following Monday, or that Monday, Chris, he decides to call Grace and Ben again and said, this was a great idea. Let's meet up, let's put it together in a different way, and then send it out and gather more inputs. So during the week, they send out a drawing a little bit distilled to loads of friends. And they, within the week, come back with a lot of requests, responses, more ideas. And then 2 weeks later, they send out a great invitation to something they call a TED Talk, because it's about technology, education, and design. And loads of people come and they have a great event. So this is not the true story about how TED started, but it might be similar experience that we've all had in some way. We draw stuff on paper and ideas emerge and they spread and potentially they become a movement. So why does it work to draw together? Well, there are a couple of reasons that I like. Well, seeing. We have this sense, which is the most dominant of our senses. It's how we navigate in the world. We take in a lot of information. And then we have this ability of doing visual thinking. We can imagine something. We can imagine futures. We can imagine future possibilities. Oh, this should be a man on the moon. And we can do this. We can imagine future possibilities, and drawing together counts the same. Now, having this ability of seeing, listening, and thinking, you can channel that into a drawing, and it clarifies, which means that other people basically get and see what we mean. We can do that alone, and we can do that together. Now, we need to have the screen there constantly, thank you. Because we need to see what we mean. Another good reason why it works is that when we draw together, we bring in multiple perspectives. Have you ever tried that? You sit and you draw, and then you can see it fits here, and you can relate, and then suddenly you're part of creating something together. And when you create something together, you invest. And that investment that makes you own what you created together. And you can then cascade. Everybody wants to tell that story, and pictures are great because everybody can interpret it in a little bit different way and tell their own part. So you might be thinking this, I still can't draw. That's why I'm so happy that you have a notepad and a black marker. So I'd like you to pull out that notepad and black marker. And the black marker is because then it can be seen. And I'll just go do a couple of things on the screen. And are you ready? So if you can draw a line, we're well off. And then you continue with a circle, a square. If it's going too fast, I'll continue. A triangle, and a wave, something like that. See, that's pretty simple. That's drawing. Now, a little bit tricky is the 5-pointed stars, but you start in the beginning and you make 5-pointed stars sort of like this. Remember, it doesn't need to be pretty. It just needs to be symbolized. Are you good with this? So we'll draw to the next page. Now you combine some of this. You make a small circle, and then you make a 4-pointed star. So you just add 4, and then you have a person. It's a world-famous star figure. Now, the second thing is, if you draw a square and two lines down and a little bit of blurb in the bottom, then you have a signpost. You don't need to draw a house to show where things are going on. You just need to write it in a post, and then you can write TEDx. Now, another square starts like this, but then you add a line and a line, and then you make a perfect arrow. The good thing about arrows is you can write inside them, but this is an easy way to make an arrow. Then you can show process, how things happen. Now, then you make a circle, and a little tip down, and then continue the circle. Then you have a speech bubble, and now you are able to put story into whatever you draw. What are people thinking or saying? A little bit tricky one comes now. Are you ready? So you make a couple of M's, or a blurb like this and a blurb like this. And then you make a circle in a little bit different way, but sort of like that. And a line in the bottom, and then 2 lines here. And you do a line up, and then a lot of stuff like this, and then down. Then you make a very sustainable light bulb. Now here's an element that maybe provides a little bit content that's relevant for today. You don't need to do the next, but I think we can see that putting these things together can make a drawing about some people wanting to move somewhere, overcoming an obstacle by getting a great idea. And this drawing could actually help maybe 100 teams or 1,000 teams have a dialogue of where are we, where do we want to go, and how do we overcome the obstacles. So the drawing helps having a conversation, and you can spread that dialogue. So why is this worth doing? If you haven't been convinced yet, at least I hope that you can go home and impress your partner or friends by doing some great new drawings. But you might also be the one who's remembered at work in the meetings, because there's something personal and authentic about drawing stuff. And in a PowerPoint technological age, this might be just another way to include presentations in a different style. But imagine if we also, at home in families, drew together when we wanted to plan a vacation. That could avoid misunderstandings, and it could help everybody be part of that journey. Or even in schools. How about making historic timelines together in class? Or drawing up the entire year calendar, what we learned in our class, and tell that to others so they could learn too. Maybe even you could have a neighborhood or a country or a big organization or a global network draw their shared change journey together. Wouldn't that be great? What it does when you draw together, it's a little bit different, because you start thinking differently. You start listening differently to what's going on when you have to co-create. And you start collaborating differently. And you might consider practicing drawing together, that you're actually practicing very important leadership skills in today's world. We're very complex and we don't hold the answers alone. It takes a little bit of courage, and we need to jump over that block of, I can't draw. Now this is a drawing made by Gaia. He's 49 years old. It's not about dinosaurs. He's head of investment in the Norwegian Broadcasting Corporation, NRK. He created this with, in mind to talk about their media player, the second version. The first version was actually, the new version was actually launched yesterday. And the team is now updating this drawing, and it helps them focus direction and within the team, but also in the rest of the organization. Now, the good news about this is that technology cannot do this for you, because it requires imagination. And the other good news is we are all visual thinkers and we can all draw. So hopefully that proves the point, and then we can together create movements. Thank you very much.